The man was sleeping when he heard strange noises coming from outside the house. He quickly put on his clothes and opened the door to check the situation. Two gangsters were found stealing a roadside car. Simon Henderson saw this and quickly stopped it loudly. But one of them saw his old face, but gradually stopped. Then the anti-Chungong aggressively walked back. Cowardly Simon Henderson saw this and rushed home, but still one step behind. The door was pushed open by the other party. Paul Franklin was annoyed by his nosy behavior, threatened to greet him every night from now on. And the next day, Simon Henderson found out that his car door had been slashed. Afraid, he came to the company and directly chose to call the police.
There was a young man outside of my house, very intimidating.
But because it cannot be proved that the other party drew the car, so the case was not accepted. No way. He can only install a camera in front of his house. But this move did not make the other party retreat. Pretty soon, Simon Henderson, who was working late at night, heard the doorbell ring. He cautiously opened the door and walked out to check. Found Paul Franklin standing nearby staring at himself. Seeing that the other party is still harassing, Simon Henderson hurriedly announced that he had installed a camera. But Paul Franklin was unmoved. Not only is it verbally humiliating, he also claims to have investigated that he has a young daughter. Hearing this, Simon Henderson can't help it anymore. Knock it to the ground with one punch. He would never allow his family to be harmed. But what Simon Henderson didn't expect was the other party landed on the back of his head. Unlucky. He's not breathing. He suddenly panicked and didn't know what to do. But kindness still drives him. The first rescue was carried out, and there was a patrol car going by. When the police saw this, they immediately took over the place and encouraged him to help others. A panicked Simon Henderson listens, then suddenly woke up. No one seems to have seen this. He lied about not knowing what was going on. When he heard the movement and went out, the other party was already like this. Soon the sheriff also arrived here to inquire about the situation. Calm down, Simon Henderson. I've already taken advantage of this time to make up lies. For authenticity, he claims to have seen a young man in a hoodie fleeing into the distance, but because it was too dark, I couldn't see each other's appearance clearly. The sheriff had no doubts, just because of this street. Only Simon Henderson has a camera in front of his house. Simon Henderson saw this and quickly said that the camera was only installed today, not connected yet. Finally, the matter was temporarily confused. Then go home and delete all the videos tonight. But he wasn't relieved. He received another terrible news. Because he was rescued in time, Paul Franklin survived. After the other party wakes up, the police may ask him to assist with the investigation. Simon Henderson hurriedly ran to the hospital to check the situation. It was only after learning that Paul Franklin was still in a severe coma that he relaxed. But the sheriff has some doubts about his actions here. Simon Henderson lied about picking up his wife from work and stopped by. Original and Beth Henderson, who was a nurse, happened to be there. But in order not to worry, Simon Henderson is still hiding something. But the next day, there is a vicious man come over and ask about the situation. It turned out that this person was Paul Franklin's father, Jordan Franklin. Thank you so much for saving his son, and invited Simon Henderson over for a drink. Guilty Simon Henderson hurries to go to work. Rejected each other. After coming to the company, he was again warmly welcomed. Just because the local media was the first to, he reported his heroic deeds. This situation makes Simon Henderson feel even more guilty. He went online and looked up the rules of self-defense. He realized that he probably wasn't even overly defensive. Information on the other side. Let Jordan Franklin know where Simon Henderson's company is located. This time, he blocked the other party directly while he was off work. Then commanded Simon Henderson to get in the car in an unquestionable tone. There's no way Simon Henderson can only come to the bar with each other, but found out that Jordan Franklin really just wanted to thank himself. Gradually, Simon Henderson also gradually relaxed. After 3 rounds of drinking, the other party finally revealed his true intentions. Original. Jordan Franklin heard he saw the criminal flee. Bring him here. Just want to confirm, is it the man sitting in the bar? This guy has been fighting Jordan Franklin before. He suspected that this was the man who was taking revenge on his son. In order not to implicate others, Simon Henderson quickly denied, but Jordan Franklin still ignored it in front of Simon Henderson. Seriously injure a man.
Was it him?
Wasn't it?
Simon, look at him.
No, it
It
is.
is! Look at him!
No, it wasn't him.
Sure!
Yes. Don't stop us.
He was so scared that he went home and quickly checked the situation of Jordan Franklin. He found out that this person's name was the owner of a security company. In fact, he was a corrupt gang leader. On the other side, the sheriff also found Simon Henderson again. She wants to ask him to help look at some of the photos. Are there any suspects mentioned? Simon Henderson could only lie about not recognizing it. The sheriff can only ask again.
Never seen Jordan before the night of the attack?
No, never.
But the sheriff investigated before and after the incident. When the police call in that block, only to find that one of the calls was made by Simon Henderson.
Was a young man outside of my house, very intimidating.
The other side, Simon Henderson, who came home, also got amazing news. The neighbor actually said he himself witnessed the whole process that night. The confused Simon Henderson quickly denied it.
No idea what you're talking about.
The neighbors didn't say much after listening, just turn away. Soon the sheriff knocked on his door. It turned out that the neighbor just called the police claiming to be a witness. But today, the sheriff happened to be not wearing a police uniform. The other party did not dare to let him enter the house. So we asked Simon Henderson to prove his identity.
This is a police officer.
Wonderful, thank you. You alright to come in a minute, just until he's settled?
Simon Henderson had no choice but to walk into the house uneasily. But what I didn't expect was, neighbors not only didn't report him, instead, it's the same as what Simon Henderson said it was a young man's hand. The suspected sheriff listened. It also completely dispelled the doubts. Wait for the other party to leave. After Simon Henderson asked neighbors why they called the police, concealed for him again, it turned out that the kind Simon Henderson family always took care of him. The neighbors originally wanted to hide it from anyone, but he already has mild Alzheimer's disease. The one who called the police just now was him after the illness. And by the time he woke up, the police had come to the door. He had to help tell the lie. And Simon Henderson knew that sooner or later, it was a problem. But he hasn't figured out how to solve it yet. Bad news at work. Fame doesn't do them any good at work. The supervisor finally put Simon Henderson on the layoff list, and at the farewell party in the evening, he was mocked in front of the crowd. But in order to get compensation smoothly, Simon Henderson put up with it. But bad things didn't end there. After returning home, Jordan Franklin actually visited again. He had someone look into the serial number of the camera used by Simon Henderson. The camera was found 5 hours before the incident, already in working condition. Simon Henderson quickly said he checked his cell phone. No surveillance footage from that day.
You are welcome to have a look.
No, I believe you.
But Jordan Franklin thinks it might be Simon Henderson's phone. Fortunately, this camera, the video will be backed up in the cloud. He wants to go to the website now and check it out. Simon Henderson quickly panicked that he had forgotten his password. Why don't you wait until you find it the next day and then send it to him? But Jordan Franklin is impatient, yelling at Simon Henderson to find it now. Just when Simon Henderson didn't know what to do, the argument drew Beth Henderson down. Watching her husband's flustered expression, she didn't know what was going on. But years of tacit understanding or let Beth Henderson seriously kick Jordan Franklin out, and Simon Henderson, who can no longer hide it, he had no choice but to tell the truth. Beth Henderson doesn't have time to blame her husband. She immediately discussed countermeasures in her mind. Pretty soon, the next day, Simon Henderson gave Jordan Franklin the password to the website, but the video of the incident that day has long been deleted by the two overnight. But in this case, change happens again. Paul Franklin woke up from a coma. Simon Henderson was so scared that he hurried home to pack his bags and run away. Beth Henderson, calm him down, don't get confused. Then he rushed to the hospital. Use your identity to sneak in the hallway to check the situation. It turns out that Paul Franklin is awake, but the brain trauma has left him in a state of amnesia. But Simon Henderson was still flustered. He rushed to the company. He wants to get the compensation immediately. The supervisor directly harassed Simon Henderson for not complying with the process. The great sense of urgency made him unable to resist it anymore. Straight up in the office, and angrily scolded each other for suing each other. But this move does not alleviate the urgent need. As soon as he got home, Jordan Franklin came over again. He wants Simon Henderson to go to the hospital to meet Paul Franklin. He might be able to use it to remember things. Beth Henderson hastily analyzed it from a medical perspective. If he just woke up, make him recall a painful experience, it's likely to make Paul Franklin's newly improved condition worse. That persuaded Jordan Franklin. He decided to wait a few days for his son to stabilize. Ask Simon Henderson for help. Simon Henderson can only pray for compensation soon. Escape from here. But the roar of that day makes supervisors feel embarrassed in front of their employees. Hit the rake. Sue him for threatening himself for compensation.
I'd throw you up if you get to a tribunal.
And by the way, you won't get any money in the meantime.
Simon Henderson, who can't get the money, only to come to the hospital with Jordan Franklin in a few days. Fortunately, Paul Franklin really forgot what happened that day. Even the murderer didn't recognize the other person standing in front of him. But as soon as Jordan Franklin went out to answer the phone, Paul Franklin's words made Simon Henderson stand up all over.
I've forgotten nothing.
It turns out that his amnesia is just a fake. But Paul Franklin said he wouldn't tell anyone.
I fucking own you now.
Unbeknownst to Jordan Franklin, he ate after the meal to thank him. But suddenly, keeps Simon Henderson uneasy. Facing each other's doubts, he could only explain that he had a little trouble at work. Jordan Franklin immediately said that the matter was left to him to solve. Soon the supervisor, who came home late at night, found that the faucet is always on, but he clearly remembered that he had closed it before leaving. He hasn't waited to figure out what's going on. Next second, Jordan Franklin took his little brother and pushed him into the pool. The next day, the supervisor texted Simon Henderson to apologize and called the compensation. Now just wait for the house to sell. He can just fly away. Beth Henderson suggested that before getting out and leaving, regardless of Paul Franklin's intentions, try to meet the requirements first. Steady each other. Soon came the day Paul Franklin was discharged from the hospital. Jordan Franklin prepared a grand welcome ceremony for it and threw a celebration party for it in the evening. Paul Franklin smiles wickedly and reminds Simon Henderson to come. He had no choice but to bite the bullet, come for an appointment. It turns out that the reason why Paul Franklin didn't turn in Simon Henderson, one is the feeling of being severely injured by an old man. It's embarrassing to spread it out. The second is also to take the opportunity to blackmail the other party. He said Simon Henderson took $100,000. The matter is written off. Simon Henderson says he can't pay that much at once, can only pay him $3,000 a month for a year.
That is all I can afford.
Maybe I'll sell him right now.
On then.
Fine. But I want $5,000 a month. Starting tomorrow.
After haggling, the two finally reached an agreement. But what they don't know is, Jordan Franklin always knew his son's personality. In order to prevent it from causing trouble everywhere, he decided to ask his men to help keep an eye on Paul Franklin. Then the next day, the scene of their transaction, it is clearly seen by men. He doesn't feel right. Immediately forced the two to follow him. Then he took them to a secret location. Paul Franklin sees that something is wrong. He quickly called him out. Then tell the truth to the man, and begged him not to tell Jordan Franklin about it. But Paul Franklin couldn't control his father's men at all. The other party directly pressed him and prepared to confront Simon Henderson. Unexpectedly, after entering the house, only to find that Simon Henderson had fled through the window. The man immediately chased after him. Paul Franklin took the opportunity to take the money again. By this time, Simon Henderson had called his wife for help. Soon Beth Henderson drove up to pick him up. She didn't expect. Unfortunately, the man who rushed out flew away. The two who thought they had accidentally killed, they fled in a panic. Little did he know that the man was only injured and not killed. At this moment, several workers heard the sound and ran over. Immediately after seeing the pistol in his waist, he immediately called the police, but he was detained by the police. Or did they send things around? At this moment, Paul Franklin is at home flaunting the luxury goods he just bought. Next second, Jordan Franklin walked in aggressively. No need to ask. The scene in front of me directly proves everything. But after this period of contact, Jordan Franklin knew Simon Henderson was an honest man. The son must have done something to provoke the other party. And if outsiders know about it, even if he understood that Simon Henderson was unintentional, they also had to kill each other for the majesty of the road. Jordan Franklin, my son is a troublemaker. The other side, Simon Henderson's family has run to the hotel to take shelter, but the daughter was allergic to the pillow, causing an asthma attack. Unfortunately, they forgot to bring the medicine because they left in a hurry. He had to venture back home again to get his medicine. But just as he was about to leave, Jordan Franklin broke doors and windows and broke in. Blocked. He can only temporarily hide under the bed. After searching for a circle to no avail, Jordan Franklin was going to leave. But suddenly Simon Henderson left his hotel room card at the door. He immediately had his men blocked here just in case. He looked for it himself according to the address. Simon Henderson saw it upstairs and realized that the key card was missing. He is blocked in the house. He can only send a message to his family to run away. He didn't know that Beth Henderson wasn't in the house at the time. Husband has not been home for a long time. Make her wait and go out to find someone to help. When she finished taking her daughter's medicine and sees the phone, it's been a long time. At this time, Jordan Franklin has followed the address to find it. Fortunately, when he broke in, the mother and daughter have escaped here without danger. But Jordan Franklin found out by the temperature of the sheets that they just ran. He quickly called his subordinates to help. Simon Henderson also hurried out to meet his family. But unfortunately, I met Paul Franklin, who happened to find him. He was really angry when he was scolded by his father, and he blamed it all on Simon Henderson. Paul Franklin decided to do it again, restore dignity and confidence. He was the first to act this time, and he was very fast. Knocked Simon Henderson to the ground. The next second, and he goes down with a wail. It turned out to be the neighbor who heard the movement. Take a knife and stab it down from behind. Simon Henderson saw this and wanted to leave, but watching Paul Franklin bleeding on the ground, he still followed his heart and walked back. Simon Henderson first told the neighbors to hurry back to the house and call an ambulance, then apply pressure to the wound to help Paul Franklin stop the bleeding. But this move also makes it impossible for him to escape what happened before. Simon Henderson had to admit that he had committed the murder. But you must ensure the safety of your family before you can explain. But he didn't expect. He hasn't waited to confess. Paul Franklin takes the lead. It was indeed a young man who claimed to have attacked him.
I have to ask, why did you tell me earlier that you'd hit Jordan?
Simon Henderson listened. He thought it was his own act of saving people. Let the other party's conscience find out. Finally decided to trust each other once, hiding something from the police again.
No comment.
The police had no choice but to acquit him, but it didn't go very far. Jordan Franklin called. Then he took it to a remote abandoned factory. Then he pulled out his pistol and prepared to kill Simon Henderson. Turns out Jordan Franklin was just trying to scare Simon Henderson. Tell him that society is sinister. Don't trust anyone. Although Simon Henderson hurt his son once, but in the end, he did save the other party. What happened before Jordan Franklin decided is written off, but the family had to leave the city. Don't come back. To men who almost became friends. They live into different worlds. Finally, we can only part ways.